Let Peter crams it.
What
are you doing?
You want to be a master of wine, you got to be able to do this.
Peter is the Lady Gaga of the world of wine.
Right now I open up the caddy.
Open up the caddy. They have yet to see my geekiness, Peter.
We are going to talk about how to preserve an opened wine bottle. Peter, is there any special way you keep an open bottle?
Generally speaking, if wine isn't finished, I would prefer to put it in the refrigerator. And if possible, to take some of the air out of it. Although I'm a little bit concerned about taking some of the air out of it, and we'll show you some of the devices that do that, because that tends to strip the wine a little bit. And so if you don't need to do that, obviously oxygen is the enemy of the wine. Mm-hmm. So if you don't need to take the oxygen out of it, you're going to drink it relatively quickly, or it's a young, high acid wine, perhaps not so much. And then there's another thing. Perhaps you have then decided, look, I've had enough of the wine, but I don't really want to throw it away. Perhaps I could use it for cooking. Mm-hmm. Then you pour oil on top of the wine so that you get a surface of the wine covered with oil.
I've never done that, yeah.
Surface of the wine covered with oil prevents any further oxidation. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're not going to drink it unless you put a straw in, but you can use it for cooking for a long period of time.
Now, even before we go further, so there's different options, right? Anytime we want to preserve wine, we can do nothing and just leave it in, right? With a cork in it, just to keep fruit flies in. We can chill it down in the fridge. We can try to suck oxygen out of it. We can pump oxygen out using inert gas, and we can use combinations thereof.
Right.
Right. Though traditionally, the Greek way of preservation would be putting some pine resin in it. Permission to be geeky. Mm-hmm. Can I be geeky here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so
But you haven't been being geeky already?
no, they have yet to see my geekiness,
With
Peter.
the pine resin and it. Okay.
So a cooler liquid will have more oxygen in it than a warmer liquid. As you lower the temperature, you decrease the rate of reaction. So you have two factors going. One is that you have more oxygen in the wine, which is potentially a bad thing, and you have slower chemical reactions. And for white wine stored in the fridge, the slower chemical reactions wins out over the higher amount of oxygen in the wine. The problem comes when you've got red wines, because you normally don't drink the red wines cold. And so if you store a red wine opened in the fridge, the oxygen that's left in there will go into solution. And then as you warm it up to get to serving temperature, bam, the wine oxidizes. So if you're going to store a red wine in the fridge, drink it quickly or drink it cold. Obviously, there's devices that can penetrate the cork.
More music.
I'm obviously
Where is yours?
So, don't want to do an advertisement for Coravin, but essentially you have this needle, and that needle will penetrate through the capsule, through the cork into the wine. This container here has compressed air, inert gas, argon, nitrogen, and then when you've placed it in the bottle, you then tilt it slightly and you press this lever here. And what this lever does, it releases the gas. The gas goes down through the needle, forces the wine back through the needle and out of the spout, and replaces the wine with inert gas. Mm-hmm. The idea behind Coravin originally was the idea that you're sitting there with this beautiful cellar of amazing wine, and you want to drink a drop of your 1982 Chateau Margaux, which is worth $30,000-$40,000.
Well, my understanding is that there's some consumers that have hooked up a contraption. You know, they generally wear a fairly long coat, something loose, and they go into the fine wine shop, and they hook up some tubing. They bring their caravan into the wine shop, and they find a nice corner, a nice bottle of wine, and it runs up. The tubing runs up into the mouth. No, of course I don't advocate that. That was just a little joke.
Okay.
A little joke.
Oh, you don't advocate that?
No, I don't.
So
Really?
The piece of tape on your neck here.
Yeah.
And how long can we keep an open wine bottle?
It depends upon the style of wine. I've had unoaked white wines that I've forgotten about that have sat in the fridge for weeks, and I've been stunned to see that they were still fine. Again, these were good quality wines to start off with. Oaked white wines don't fare as well.
No?
Sweet wines can do very well stored in the fridge for long periods of time.
People sometimes ask how long I should do bottle breathing, for example. You open the cork and you just leave the bottle as it is.
It does almost nothing. And the reason being is that the rate that oxygen goes into the liquid is proportionate to the surface area. If you do something that many somms would consider to be batshit crazy, that you now take this young wine, you pour a little bit out, you put the cork back in it, you shake it up, it's going to get oxygen in it pretty quickly. Obviously, the same process happens when you put it in a decanter, and the reason that the decanters have a broad base is so you have a large surface area to get not only oxygen when you pour it, right, and the turbulence is putting oxygen into the wine, but then you continue to get oxygen transfer into the wine because of the large surface area.
So on that note, many, many years ago, one of my mentors was a very knowledgeable guy, and what he would do when he had a young wine, a very good wine, that he particularly felt was not ready to drink, he would warm the bottle slightly, and then he would take 2 decanters, carefully decant the wine, and then move it from one decanter to another 5 or 6 times, and then put the decanter back in the fridge for a short period of time to get the wine back to temperature it should have been.
And why does the warming work? Back to what we were talking about before. So as you warm it, right, you increase the rate of chemical reactions.
Right.
Now, even though it's harder to get oxygen into the warmer wine than it is a cooler wine, the decanting brings in lots of oxygen.
Right.
And then it being at that warmer temperature, you're going to get the chemical reactions quicker. Chill it down, drink it.
That's what we did.
I got surprised that you had mentors. I
Well,
thought you were born like just like
I
this.
was born like this.
Peter is the Lady Gaga of the world of wine. He was born this way.
Here's another thing. There are various things that you can use to suck the oxygen out of an opened bottle. One of them was called vacuvan. We don't have one here today, but the vacuvan consists of a small device that sucks the air out of the wine and a rubber cork with a hole in it. So you put the cork in the wine, the vacuvan pulls the air out of it, and the suction compresses the rubber cork and makes an airtight seal. And so that protects the wine, but again, the suction does strip some of the fruit from the wine, so you don't want to do that too often. And if you're going to drink the wine relatively quickly, you probably want to avoid that. And then here is another version of that, but this one for individual bottle. And that is, you put this over the neck of the bottle, and you pump like this, which causes a suction, and then you just leave it on the bottle.
And I think that
And you just seal it up like that, and you leave it on the bottle. So each bottle then requires one of these. I see one of the questions that you had an interest in was, if you're going to put the cork back in the wine, and it's so difficult to put the cork back in, you put the cork in upside down, which is usually easier.
Yeah.
It is difficult to put the cork back in, but I fight against that all the time, using my really manly strength to put the cork in the bottle the same way it came out. Why? If we've taken the cork out of the bottle and we've drunk from the bottle, we know if the wine is in condition or not. I have had on numerous occasions in the beginning, which is what taught me to do this. You take the cork, you turn it upside down, you put it in the bottle, and the bottle shakes around because I'm, after all, a vendor. I'm running around in my car. The wine is touching the cork, it's sloshing around. Sometimes TCA, what brings cork taint to the wine, is present in the top part of the cork. And you put the cork in upside down, and hey presto, 5 minutes later, you have corked wine.
Yeah.
Don't you keep it lying down?
Am I lying down when I'm doing this? It's difficult. I find it spills on me when I do that.
Many people ask this question to me because people are used to keeping the bottles on the side. Even the open bottle, they got used to keeping it on the side.
Yeah, no reason. There's just a risk of it spilling or leaking out.
Could we taste
Yeah.
wine?
Okay, so we have a Cadillac,
And look at the vintage.
2010.
Very good vintage.
So 2010, very good vintage. Or as my family members in New Jersey would say, yo, when you gonna open up the caddy? Let's try the caddy, okay?
Right now I open
Right
up the
now,
caddy.
open up the caddy. So we look at this wine, right, just right off the get-go. It's got some clearing at the rim and a fair amount of brick change, right?
Yeah,
So it's
looks fully mature.
fully
Looks,
mature.
might not be, but it
Color-wise.
does look.
That's beautiful, isn't it?
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Let's talk about an asso. So the asso has two prongs that you put in, and then you rock it back and forth, and so there's no hole made in the cork. And the asso was also known as the butler's friend, because the butler could then, with a razor, make a slit in the capsule, open up the capsule, use the asso to go in, pour some fine wine, fill it up with cheaper wine, put the cork back in, put the capsule back on. And that happened for a couple of centuries, I think, in Europe.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
So you have a very good knowledge about many tricks in wine, including the hose.
The tricks of the trade.
We talk about the closure
Yeah.
here.
Let's see Peter show us how.
Put it properly back.
No problem.
Wow.
And now he's going to squeeze the effing thing in there so we can't get any more wine out.
Stop here.
You want to be a
What are you
master of
doing?
wine? You want to be a master of wine, you got to be able to do this.
What?
We can dress him up.
Yeah.
He can pour us some wine, but he won't pour us more than not even half a bottle.
But if you leave the cork on the table for some time, when it dries out,
Yeah, it doesn't
then
dry.
it's harder to
Right.
put it back.
But it doesn't dry out that quickly, right? Unless you're having some, you're in a hot, dry place and you're having an all-night drunk and you happen to wake up and say, holy shit, we didn't finish that one. Let's put this cork that's been sitting in the sun back in the bottle. We'll trap those fruit flies in there. They'll give some protein. It'll be a protein fining.
And about vacuum closer, actually.
We talked about them.
Yeah, but I used the vacuum closer before too, but I don't see that much difference between the vacuumed one and the bottles with just a cork back.
Again, it depends upon the bottle. Generally, you can hook your vacuum cleaner up to the bottle. I mean, you have to have Peter there. He doesn't look it, but he can move very quickly. So you hook your vacuum cleaner up to this sucker, and then Peter crams it in there, and he waits until the liquid's being sucked up to just about there. Smashes it in there with thumbs of his.
That wasn't my question.
So with your question,
Yeah.
it's really hard for you to tell because those wines that you've kept in the fridge and that have, they have maintained their fruit and everything in the fridge without the vacuum are not going to be that much different from those that have been put there with the vacuum. In other words, those that have not oxidized badly are going to taste similar to those that have been vacuumed, although the ones that have been vacuumed would be less likely to oxidize. So probably the only real difference you could possibly taste would be a slight diminishing of the fruit on the wine that you had vacuumed.
이럴 땐 이 와인 네이버밴드로 놀러 오시면 와인을 잘 몰라도 편하고 싸게 사실 수 있도록 제가 많이 도와드립니다. 다들 만족하시고 좋아하시더라고요. 가입하는 게 싫으시면 wineking.co.kr로 놀러오세요.